Okay, chapter 9, voice leading in 4 voices. We just spent chapter 8 talking about how to voice lead in 2 voices. Now we're going to do it in 4 voices. And by 4 voices, I mean the traditional SATB texture, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, if you want to think of it in terms of strings, first violin, second violin, viola, cello. So the standard 4-part texture was established by Bach in the Bach chorales, which we play in orchestra. All voice leading practices from Counterpoint will now apply to a 4-voice texture, SATB, rather than just a 2-part texture. If we're going to use passing and neighbor tones, they will just expand a 4-part texture. So, of course, there is a laundry list of rules. You don't necessarily have to memorize all these rules. I will tell you which ones are the most important ones, but they will all come into play while doing 4-part writing. So the first one, and it's probably one of the most important rules, is to hold common tones between the chords. In doing so, you don't get into trouble. If you start leaping around, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. So if you stay put by holding common tones, you will not get into trouble. Number 2, very important, move in contrary motion wherever possible, because contrary motion is the voice leading motion. Okay. Number 3, put active tones, meaning the 3rd or the 7th of your chords in the upper voices. That's not a hard and fast rule, but it sounds better when you do this, okay? Number 4, move stepwise whenever possible. Stepwise is your friend. If it's boring, think about if you have to sight read something. If it was like this, if it was, you'd be super happy, okay? Boring is best. Number 5. You cannot double active tones. So when you're in a 7th chord, the 7th of the chord cannot be doubled, okay? You also cannot double the leading tone. That is very, very not bueno, okay? Number 6, do not outline a dissonant interval. So we're not going to be doing an augmented second or a tritone. You cannot outline that. Number 7, preserve a voice's independence. Meaning don't get too close to other voices. It gets tricky, okay? Number 8, in root position chords, double the root. Again, not a hard and fast rule, but you will find yourself having less problems if you do it. Number 9, make sure that when you're in minor, a 7 or a 5 chord should include the accidental. You have to make sure you're always raising scale degree 7. Few more guidelines, if you will. You can check voices in pairs, meaning bass tenor, bass alto, tenor soprano, and so on and so forth, looking for parallels, overlaps, spacing issues. The alto should never be more than an octave away from either the soprano or the tenor. SAT, the soprano, alto, and the tenor, they're gonna kind of stay together. The bass can be more than an octave away from anybody, from the tenor. That's totally fine. But these 3 voices, you can never have more than an octave between any of them. 11, the places where you're going to find the most illegal augmented or diminished intervals are going to be in the alto and tenor. It just always happens. You're going to want to try and write singable lines, meaning stepwise motion. Don't leap. Again, that's a good thing. Okay, number 12, and this is a rule. The AP will just ream you if you don't do this. In a 6/4 chord, which is the other half of this chapter, make sure you're always doubling the bass, meaning whatever the bass note is, another voice has to sing it, okay? Number 13, do not omit chord tones, except possibly In a final tonic chord, you can omit the fifth, but you can never omit the third. I've seen people try to omit the root. Don't do that either, okay? Seventh chords are really only going to be on 5, 7, or 2. Number 15, after a leap, try for stepwise contrary motion. It's just a really good rule of thumb. And 16, very important, do not cross voices, meaning your alto cannot sing higher than the soprano. Your tenor cannot sing higher than the alto. Preserving the voice's independence, keeping them in their own separate little box. A few more things to consider here. It's showing you the vocal ranges of the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. The soprano probably will never really sing as low as a middle C. That's pretty low. The alto probably won't sing where you have ledger lines, though in real life they absolutely can. But for the purposes of 4-part writing, the altos aren't going to sing that low. The tenors are not going to sing that low. If you have a tenor in ledger lines, it's usually a good thing. Just be careful that your alto is not overlapping with the tenor. The bass will sing low. Couple of position thoughts. There are 3 positions for 4-part writing. A closed position would mean that the upper 3 voices are as close as they can be. There will be no additional chord tones that can be inserted between adjacent voices. So everything's really, really close-knit between the top 3 voices. If it's an open position, which is usually a better position because it sounds fuller, upper voices are separated so that chord tones could be inserted between either the soprano and the alto, or the alto and the tenor, or both. If you're in keyboard style, you're just going to have the bass in the left hand of the piano, and all 3 voices would be able to fit in the right hand. Is this going to be on the AP? Probably not. Is it good Jeopardy knowledge? I would say yes.